Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coffee with Craig show. We'll be talking about commercial real estate in Central and Eastern Europe. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special edition of the Coffee with Craig show. I'm here with George Mula, who is, as I know, a real estate investor, developer, and now author of the book called Polish Boy from London. So, George, welcome to the show, and very interesting book. Read it through. Probably a lot of these people that are watching the Coffee with Craig show know you because we're covering real estate every day. But let's just start by introducing yourself and just then tell us a little bit about your life and about yourself.
Sure. Well, thanks very much for inviting me. It's great to be here, Craig, even though I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We got you some nice tea, though. Yeah.
Witam wszystkich w Polsce. Yeah. As you rightly point out, everybody knows me for the last 25 years in real estate in Central Europe, with something like €1 billion of transactions under my belt. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. My second son, Edward, bought me a book recently. By the way, just stop any sibling rivalry. I have 4 sons.
Okay.
Alex, Edward, Richard, and Michal.
And who's your favorite?
No favorites, okay. But they're all very different.
Love them all. Okay.
But we don't want sibling rivalry.
No, we don't want that.
So Edward bought me a book by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, okay.
Called Be Useful.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, you know, you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is obviously very flattering, yeah. But took me rather by surprise. Mm-hmm. The only previous association that I thought I had with Arnold Schwarzenegger is these boots I'm wearing, because when I bought them a few years ago in Burlington Arcade, just off Piccadilly in London, mm-hmm. The sales guy said, the previous pair I sold to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Wow, okay.
I guess he was staying at the Ritz across the road.
Probably.
But what he meant was that Schwarzenegger had 3 or perhaps now 4 careers. So first he was a champion bodybuilder. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Then he became a film star, at the same time accumulating a very impressive portfolio of real estate.
Sure.
And then he became a governor of California. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now he's more he's making a few films, but motivational mm-hmm. area and very, very good. And of course that takes huge determination and massive discipline.
I think he's hanging out in Santa Monica in Southern California, riding his bike up and down the beach or something now. I see quite often on his Instagram page or Facebook page or something, yeah.
Absolutely. So he came from Austria. So my first career was in taxation in London, and then that sort of stretched a bit to advising on investment as well.
It looks like you were kind of supermodel in this book, or a little bit of fitness here too as well, I can see, yeah?
Well, I played competitive squash for 30 years.
Okay.
So before, of course, 6 years ago, I entered the boxing ring at the National Stadium.
Absolutely, yeah, you're very impressive, yes. White-collar boxing, yes.
I've always done that, and actually that brings me to the discipline point. So I came to Poland with the first British government mission in 1989, and took part in the transformation process, mm-hmm. privatized 12 companies, and then went into real estate. And the interesting thing there is that in 1990, there was a list of companies that the Poles decided they wanted privatized.
Right.
On that list, 30 years ago, was Norblin.
Wow, okay.
and only now, in the last couple of years, has Jan Motz with Capital Park opened a fabulous project, because these companies, state enterprises, their business very often no longer made sense, but they had locations which are fantastic.
Yeah, because they were manufacturing silverware and very nice things, but probably not a big market for it.
Exactly. So so I moved into real estate, and now I've written this book.
So what compelled you? A little bit of Arnold Schwarzenegger and your son here a bit, I guess. Yeah.
To write the book.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Well, I think there are a number of reasons. First of all, because I came in this incredibly exciting period in the early 1990s, I thought that would make a fantastic, wonderful background for a novel, which this is. Secondly, always loved writing. I wrote the history of my grandmother, lots of things for my kids, and quite a few love letters as well.
Right. Well, I see you said it was a novel. I've read a few things in here that sound like could be very true to what has happened in your life. But let's just start why you made the main character kind of an anti-hero, and also naming him George. Is there any relation?
Well, I could have made him
superhero,
like a superhero, a nice guy. I don't know how that's defined, maybe in some kind of woke terms, but I thought it would be much more interesting and much more fun to make him an anti-hero, and it provided a much bigger forum for as an author, you need to, or should, I think, state some of your own views, some of which are perhaps a bit controversial, and so it gave me more of a forum for that. But I think anti-heroes are great. Apparently, a lot of actors love playing villains rather than,
of course,
than heroes. It's fun.
It's a lot more exciting for sure.
So that's true. Secondly, George, I was lucky. I had a surname, just a four-letter word, which was quite neutral. But I wanted to convey to the reader what it was like growing up in England with a Polish background and a Polish surname like Gabrielczyk, Jaszczykowski or Świętochowski. These guys practically daily had to defend themselves with their fists in the playground at school, because the Poles were not popular after the war. We're talking about the 1950s, and despite,
you could kind of sneak through with your last name. It wasn't some.
So I didn't have that, but I had George, and which is Jerzy in Polish, and so in the book I demonstrate the kind of things that happened using my name, and it was just convenient. I did toy with not doing it, but it was just easier.
Right.
And I came into quite a bit of flack actually, because I also used an old photograph on the front cover, and that's because the publishers came up with a picture of something which the guy looked like a cage fighter, and I just didn't think it conveyed the character at all.
Cage fighter.
So I thought, well, hell,
this one looks a lot better.
So picture my first wife took many 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, this photo. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So why where people are watching this, and other than the people that know you, that are for sure going to get a book and read it, if we're talking to someone that doesn't know you and they're like, if you could give them in 1, 2, maybe 3 reasons, catchy, like one sentence things, why should they spend the time reading it? Buying it is one thing, that's easy, but spending the time reading it, what are they gonna get out of this?
One of the things, again, I try to do, and of course, when you read a book, the author states his views on things. One of the things I wanted to do was to push back a little on the situation we have between men and women today. Things were very different in 1992, and I think it's good for people to have a snapshot of attitudes then. I think, you know, we all know through history women had a pretty raw deal, but I also think that in recent times that's very much been redressed, and in fact, my view, and everyone can disagree, I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far.
Okay.
And that's a big issue. You know, young men today only produce 25% of the testosterone of people in my age. And I think you make the cut as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I saw a little graph. It seemed like every decade they were losing about 10 or 20%. Yeah?
Exactly. And if you add to that aggressive feminism, that's actually quite emasculating for young men, and that, in my opinion, stifles the entrepreneurial spirit, and that's bad for the economy. So I think there's a message there, and I think that's an interesting slant. And then you know, not a lot of people have perhaps raised money for a business, an international business. Some of that I thought was potentially quite interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I think for people that are not doing that at all and just working day-to-day lives for a company, it's like, well, how does that even work, and how does it happen? And I think quite interesting things, and also a lot of nice girls George seemed to have met over the years as well. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting.
At least they started nice. I don't know.
I think a lot of people assume that this is some sort of crass catalogue of conquests by some.
Well, we wouldn't want that.
No, by some chauvinistic strutting peacock. But I think when you read the book, and indeed, you know, women who have read the book appreciate that even in the intimate scenes, the subject is dealt with quite delicately, and yes, the anti-hero definitely has a bloated ego. And actually, one of my favorite reactions that I had from a lady who read the book was, she said, "It's loathsome."
Good, that's a great quote.
The anti-hero is has a bloated ego. He objectifies women, but then she went on to say, but I wanted to put it away. I didn't want to read it, but it was so well written that I just couldn't help reading it, and the intimate scenes were so authentic, and so
very good.
That was interesting, but yeah, loathsome. I loved that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just remember one incident in the book on Christmas Eve. It was almost like you were being abused. It was more like not the Me Too movement, but like the Him Too movement. And when I read it, I feel that you're still damaged by this. Tell us a little bit about this young lady that was sort of
this was great,
like abusing you.
This was Christmas Eve, 1980, and as in England, people don't celebrate
Christmas Eve. Yeah, it's Christmas Day.
But it's the last day. You know, people are off afterwards, and usually people go off for a fairly liquid lunch.
It's more drinking at work than home with the family, eating fish or something. Yeah.
But of course, being Polish, I wanted to finish early, and so I worked through lunch.
Right.
And I was sitting at my desk. It's like about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was a partner's assistant. I was sharing a room with a senior partner.
Okay.
And he was giving dictation, as you did in those days.
Right.
And ladies use shorthand. And so she was sitting by his desk taking this shorthand. And suddenly this actually quite pretty young lady appears at the door, walks straight up to me, sits on my lap, and starts kissing me passionately. And then when she comes up for air, she says, "I always wanted to do that."
Okay. Christmas Eve, why not? Yeah.
And then she sort of slowly, reluctantly got up and walked out of the room. And of course, it ruined my life.
Yeah, clearly, yes. You seem still. There was a lot of. I mean, this kind of trauma. A lot of times, you hear women are going to psychiatrists and therapy for years. To get through it.
Absolutely, I have to start that.
You have to start. Yes. But you have to start the healing.
But I have to find her. And then him
she
too.
Should apologize, right? Yeah, him too. Movement.
And I think also, of course, the company is a huge company now. I think they have a vicarious liability as employers.
They owe you a lot.
This terrible person that's damaged me.
Yeah, exactly. I can see the damage it's caused. Yes.
And you know, there's a lot.
Don't start crying or anything. There's no crying on the Coffee with Craig show. You'll just have to work through it on your own.
But and I don't want to hear that men are different to women. I mean, we're all equal.
Yeah, we're all equal now. We're all the same, not even equal. The same. So, that's different. All right. Well, I see there's a lot more men crying these days, you know, and I mean, the women don't seem to really like that, but, you know, when they actually do it, they always say they want the more sensitive, but then when men are starting to cry, they're like, oh, God, what's wrong with this guy?
Well, I think, again, one of the issues is that if women, I beg your pardon, define their ideal man, he is a sort of very compliant guy. And actually, that's the quickest route to despising him, because you don't have sufficient. There's no edge,
right,
and you need that. And it's easy, perhaps wrongly, but it's easy to lose respect for someone who's too compliant.
And then you end up in the friend zone.
Yeah, or with a lady who bosses you about and doesn't like you very much.
Exactly. So that's another good reason to read the book. So a good reason for men to read it and women to read it. I think so, and it also talks about how much effort and discipline it takes when you have a business. It all seems very glamorous, but it's very, very hard work. And the more driven you are, we all have ups and downs in our life, and you'll have more of them if you're very focused on your business. And of course, one of the reasons I wrote the book was I was going through a low period. I was left on my own in a house of 700 square meters with echoes, real and metaphorical. Wow.
And, it was a choice of either being out on the town every night or absorbing my mind with writing a book. So that was a very, very good option. And I don't have a television. I haven't had for years.
Gosh, okay.
Life's too short.
Right.
And
I think that also drains you of testosterone, sitting around watching TV all day instead of going to the gym or something.
Well, as you know, boxing, I was training 18 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I still train 12 hours a week anyway. So I think a healthy body is a healthy mind.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, something else that Schwarzenegger conveys. Very, very important. Your energy levels are much, much higher. Indeed. I mean, I have a theory which is very unpopular, and it's not in the book.
Oh, okay. But you can put it in book 2.
But yeah, in the animal kingdom, we assess intelligence as a function of brain weight to body weight. So I know dolphins are the most intelligent because their brain is the heaviest in relation to their body.
And they are pretty smart, these dolphins.
Yeah. So, humans are animals as well.
I'm sure.
And therefore, if you get fat, you become less intelligent, not only less attractive.
Yeah, pound for pound, you're less intelligent. Yes. Okay.
Now, that may seem, a bit spurious, but actually, your energy levels are lower. You become less dexterous, and you become less efficient in what you do. So it depends, how you define intelligence. Maybe your IQ doesn't drop, but you're
more lethargic. Yeah, you're thinking less just because it's tired. You're tired.
You're less effective.
Right. Another good reason to read a book. Yeah.
Another good reason. I have my own idiosyncrasies about the way women look in keeping with the period, but actually, and I'm sure people will hate me for saying this, but what I find attractive in a woman hasn't changed since I was 16 years old.
Okay, good. You want to list those qualities, or?
Well, I think they're
in the book. Yeah, you got to read the book.
They're in the book, and I state, and absolutely, it's absolutely true. Fashion, it's never been based on aesthetics. It's a question of constant change, which is needed commercially to sell cloth.
Yeah.
And so it's not aesthetics; it's change.
Yeah. Well, every season there's a new style because they're trying to sell new clothes. Yeah.
Exactly. And my preferences are actually very bad in selling cloth because there ain't much of it used.
Right. Yeah. Right. The less, the more it costs. Yeah. So why are you wrapping up the book in 1992? What was the reason for that date for that year to finish?
I think the sort of pioneering frenzy sort of came to an end just about then. The privatization, initial privatization stopped, and in terms of the anti-hero, that's when he switches and starts up after his big downfall.
Right.
He starts at nuclear and enters the world of real estate. So it was a kind of natural break, and it also, of course, spares the blushes of the people that I've been doing business with in more recent years.
Right, they're probably worried about the next book coming out in real estate. Maybe they'll give you some projects so you're too busy to do the next book.
Yeah, but in fact, I think things calmed down. When I was traveling around Poland initially, like 30 odd years ago, very often in the hotel room, the client or the people I was visiting would install a young lady, and
really, wow, okay,
and I was faced with the sort of embarrassing situation of having to ask her to leave.
Oh, right. Okay.
And of course, when investors came across at that time, Poland was a very poor country, and they had an expectation of
little bit of entertainment.
A little bit of entertainment, and I had to accommodate that. But people from England, especially, I found, they had this delusion that they were wooing these young, or they wanted the delusion.
Yeah.
Although these were actually ladies were being remunerated for their services, so that was actually
for creating delusion or illusion.
Quite a difficult balance to strike, and of course I mention it in the book because it's very amusing.
Right. So that'll be like the 1992 to 2002 book or something. A little bit more about that.
That will be, I think, more focused on the anti-hero.
Right. Okay.
Rather than people visiting, and more about his travels around the world.
Well, you're doing a lot of traveling, and you've done a lot of traveling, so that'll be also very interesting.
Yeah, I used to travel like 100 days a year.
Right.
Which I think broadens the mind enormously.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Different cultures. We have a lot to learn from people. I think I mentioned when we were talking earlier, you know, Thailand, very, very interesting culture. It's associated with lots of bad things, but also, you know,
great spicy food. Yeah,
food's fantastic,
amazing.
culture fantastic, and yeah, even a Polish element for those that are lucky enough to stay at the Oriental, where Joseph Conrad Korzeniowski wrote some of his books.
Right. Well, February 8th, you have a book signing at InterContinental on the first floor just happens to be during our retail awards. So if you, and I think people could buy books there, or do they need to buy them before and bring them to you?
Well, they can do both. They can do both.
So buy a book before, read it, and then meet George February 8th at the InterContinental for the book signing. I think it's 9:30 to 11:30, something like that,
that's
or 12.
right.
Yeah.
And be good to have cash because it's like 50s water.
Yeah, so bring 50s, buy 2 books, bring 100 Swatis with you because George won't have change either. So, and if you have your favorite pen from to write, bring that too. So February 8th, obviously come to George's book signing, meet George Mula, great book, and maybe a discount on the second book as well when that comes out. But a lot happening there. Very fun book to read. Very exciting. I think people that know you will just buy it just to make sure they're not in it or something. But I guess if it ends in 92, even better. And anything we missed, any sort of highlights or angles you want to just throw out there as like, hey,
you know, you can delve. I mean, one of the things I personally find hilarious was the first privatization that we did, the introduction to the chairman, because
more Polish style of privatization, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah? By the way, the ministry lost our papers deliberately like 6 times. Right. So like an stack like that, like an encyclopedia, and some guy wrote his doctorate thesis based on the materials. We had 3 changes of government. It was one every year. It took about 3 years to do it, so that was a bit frustrating. But we got it through. But when we introduced the subject to the chairman, my colleague who was leading the privatization had been on a very, very heavy night before. And I won't go into the whole thing, but when he started presenting at 9:30 in the morning to the chairman, he actually fell asleep in his own mid-sentence.
Oh, no. And no one noticed, right? It was like, they're like, okay, just buy it. If you're privatizing, they want to sell you.
But that was, I mean, when I think about it, I laugh out loud. It's a very, very funny story there.
Well, George, great to see you. We'll see you February 8th at the InterContinental. If you're doing any other book signings, great, let us know. In the text, there will be links to where you can buy the books in Poland or online as well. We'll have that. We'll have links also to George. So if you want to ask him any questions, you can do that online. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up. Sounds very exciting. Good to buy the book. If you're a man, buy the book. We need to make sure that our men have more testosterone, especially the younger ones, where it is looking pretty weak on that front, I would say.
On that note, one of the few ways you can naturally increase it is heavy work in the gym.
Well, there you go. Let's sign up for the gyms and let's promote the fitness clubs of the world and start using them, and a little less TV. So, George, thank you for coming on the Coffee with Craig show. Great to see you as always, and we'll see you February 8th at the InterContinental here in Warsaw for first floor for book signing.
Thanks very much, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, great to have you. And everyone, thank you for watching this special edition of the Coffee with Craig show. Write a comment. If you watch this, write a comment in the bottom. We definitely want to hear what your comments are, good or bad, especially bad. And buy the book before you make too many bad comments. Make sure that you've at least got it and you've read it. And yeah, and we'll see you on February 8th. And for everybody watching the Coffee with Craig show, we'll catch up with you later with the news. Enjoy the rest of the day. Click here to subscribe to the Coffee with Craig show, and don't forget to share it with your friends.